So this is just a short video on the endocrine system, or the hormonal system in the bodies. So this is a system of glands in the body which produce hormones to carry out responses. Hormones are chemicals which are released into the blood, and they will target certain organs to trigger a certain response. Now in the image here we have some examples of organs and glands in the endocrine system. In order to maintain a constant internal environment, different hormones will be released to control certain levels within our body. Now, those levels include the temperature, which must be around 37 degrees. It includes the amount of water in our body, so that there is enough for us to survive, and so that there's also not too much, which can cause harm as well. And the one which we'll be mostly looking at today, which is the amount of glucose within our blood. Now the hormone associated with glucose that we've mostly heard of is insulin, but it is not the only hormone associated. We'll be looking at another hormone related to it as well. So insulin acts in a way in our bodies to control the glucose level. Insulin is involved whether blood glucose levels are too high or too low. So in this example here, our glucose level increases whenever we eat a carbohydrate-rich meal. As a result, more insulin is produced, and as a result, respiration increases, more glucose is taken up by cells, and some of that glucose is converted into glycogen, which is stored primarily in the liver. This results in blood glucose levels falling and returning back to normal. Here it is also important to note that as blood glucose levels return to normal, insulin production is reduced. So our cells need an exact level of glucose in the blood. Excess glucose will get turned into glycogen, which is stored in the liver. The liver in this case is the primary organ where the response is going to occur. There's two hormones involved, and they come from the pancreas. The pancreas is the gland which will release insulin, which is the one we've already talked about, and a second one known as glucagon. So if there's too much glucose in the blood, insulin converts some of the glycogen, allowing levels to fall back to normal. So if we see our bloodstream at the bottom here, there is high levels of glucose. These levels are reduced and converted into glycogen in the liver due to the presence of insulin. On the other hand, if glucose levels are too low, glucagon is involved. Glucagon can actually convert glycogen within the liver back into glucose. So in this example, our blood has low levels of glucose. Glucagon converts some of the glycogen in the liver back into glucose, which can be used for respiration in the body. Now, this is an example of negative feedback. So some hormones affect only one target organ, most affect more than one. When the hormone has had the desired effect, further production of the hormone needs to be controlled. So in other words, when insulin has converted enough of the glucose in our blood into glycogen, we do not need to produce any more. If we continue to produce insulin at this stage, we will not have enough glucose in the blood, which is also harmful. So whenever enough glucose has been converted to glycogen, the production of insulin is stopped. This is controlled by a process known as negative feedback. To recap what negative feedback is, it involves all three images here. So our brain in this case, the pancreas and the liver. So all of these are involved in regulating blood glucose, and there is messages sent between all three. So the brain first of all detects the level of glucose in our blood. So if it detects an increase in blood glucose levels, the pancreas will secrete insulin, which will have an effect on the liver as glucose is converted to glycogen and stored there. Once enough of the glucose has been converted to glycogen and glucose levels return to normal, another message is sent to the brain which ensures it does not produce any more insulin and that glucose levels are maintained. So it's important to think, what would happen if the pancreas kept producing insulin? What would happen to the glucose in our blood? And what would happen if all of the glucose in our blood was converted to glycogen? What are the effects on your body? Likewise, if glucose levels decrease, so rather than increase, they decrease, the pancreas is also informed of this, and rather than insulin being produced, glucagon will be. This will convert glycogen in the liver back into glucose, which will move into the blood. Again, blood glucose levels return to normal, and the brain is notified of this, reducing the production of glucagon. So this is essentially what negative feedback is. It can control when blood levels are too high, and it can also control when blood levels are too low. When the hormone has had the desired effect, in either case, the body will stop producing the hormone. So that is a quick introduction to negative feedback and homeostasis in the body. So just a quick definition: homeostasis is the maintenance of a constant internal environment within the body. Part of this is the control of glucose levels, and glucose levels are maintained within our blood by a process known as negative feedback.